My mother always controlled me, claiming it was for my own good. On the day of my teaching credential interview, she deliberately splashed sewage on my dress, making me late. A woman should have shame. What kind of attire is this? Later, she forced me to marry a gambler to pay off debts, and I was tortured to death. When the neighbors tried to call the police, she vehemently stopped them. I know my daughter well. She's always been promiscuous. Since my son-in-law did that, he must have had his reasons. I support him. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back on the day of the credential interview. In this life, the crazed mother, the drunken father, the gambling brother, and this wretched family. I want nothing to do with them. Shun Qingqing, do you have any shame at all? Trying to show off by dressing like this. Do you ever listen to me? How did our family produce such a shameless hussy? Hearing those familiar insults, I opened my eyes, staring at my mother's contorted face. Before I could react, she grabbed my ear, a sharp pain piercing through me. I looked at myself, no traces of torment, no bruises. Had I been reborn? Seeing that I didn't speak, my mother shouted again. Shun Qingqing, I'm talking to you. Are you even listening? Don't think I don't know what you are up to. Now come home with me. Stop embarrassing us out here. For the credential interview, I had chosen a set of neat, professional shirt and long skirt. But in my mother's eyes, this perfectly normal outfit was so appalling. Looking at her scrutinizing gaze, my eyes narrowed. In my previous life, I was also on my way to the credential interview when my mother, without warning, tried to drag me home. When I refused, she had thrown a bucket of sewage at me, ruining my clothes and covering me in filth. After making sure that I had missed the interview, my mother's face had immediately changed, and she had walked over to me with a smile. Qingqing, we should be chaste. A good woman never shows off in public, she had said. Listen to your mother and come home. I will make sure you marry a good man. Someone who won't mind that you're dirty. Later, I learned that this so-called good man, like my brother, was a complete gambling addict. My mother had tried to marry me off to him, just to pay off my brother's debts. After waking up, I had tried to run home many times, but my mother had always caught me and sent me back. Qingqing, I'm doing this for you. He's just working hard to make more money. This man is ambitious and motivated, so don't be ungrateful. Later, he lost a lot of money gambling and imprisoned me. Anyone who paid could sleep with me. I was raped to death by a group of men. When the neighbor, Auntie Pang, tried to call the police, my mother had stopped her. I know my daughter well. She's always been promiscuous. She still acts like that even after getting married. This is what she deserves. So in this life, I would never let history repeat itself. Sure enough, when I ignored her, my mother, as before, produced a large bucket of disgusting sewage, ready to throw it at me. But this time I wouldn't give her that chance. I took my opportunity and kicked the bucket, emptying its contents onto her. The sewage splashed all over her head and body, a horrible stench emanating from her. There were even some unidentified pale yellow solids hanging on her clothes. The others present were so horrified that they backed away. My mother retched several times and then pointed at me, screaming, Shun Qingqing, you ungrateful beast. I'm just trying to stop you from meeting that man and you do this to me. In the old days, a hussy like you would have been drowned in a pig cage. I might as well be dead. Covered in filth, she knelt on the ground, wailing as if she had suffered the greatest injustice. The bystanders, while covering their noses, refused to get close to my mother. However, they started to criticize me. That girl looks pure, but she must be such a slut. Look at her mother trying to kill herself, and she just stands there like she doesn't care. What a heartless daughter. She threw sewage at her own mother. How could she? Some self-righteous people even formed a human wall, blocking me from escaping. Listening to their comments, my mother looked at me, her eyes filled with triumph. The more they condemned me, the happier she became. She knew that if I was late, my credential interview would be ruined. This way she could keep me at home and do whatever she wanted. But I, reborn, would not let her have her way. With everyone watching, I pulled out my written test result, which clearly showed that I was first. Then I took out my admission ticket, ID, and a pile of thick notes, showing them to everyone. Then I fell to my knees with a thud, pinched myself and started to cry. Mom, don't hit me. Don't hit me. I just want to go to the credential interview. I'm not going to meet any man. Please don't sell me to pay off my brother's gambling debts. I promise I will give you all the money I earn. I won't keep a single cent. I crawled to my mother step by step. The thin fabric of my long dress gradually wore away. The rough surface of the road drew blood from my knees, and sharp little stones dug into my flesh. Underneath my knees there was a long red dragging mark, a horrifying sight. There was no pain, just numbness. My mother was always hiding behind the excuse that she was doing what was best for me, and demanded that I follow her instructions, satisfying her own twisted desire for control. Now I would use this bitter plan to slap her in the face. The people around finally understood the situation. It was a mother who favored boys over girls, didn't want her daughter to become a respectable teacher. Instead, she wanted to sell her to make money to pay for her son's gambling debts. Oh my God, how could there be such cruel mothers? If I were her daughter, I would have cut ties a long time ago. I wouldn't stay in a blood-sucking family. The human wall around me broke down, and they made way for me. A kind young woman even came over to help me clean my knees with antiseptic and cotton swabs. I looked at the time and sighed in relief. Luckily, I still had time. After cleaning myself up, I tidied up my clothes, intending to continue my journey to the interview. My mother grabbed my dress. "You little bitch, don't think you can fly away so easily." "I won't let go." "What can you do about it?" Her hands clutched my dress tightly, refusing to let go. Time was passing, and my mother's smile grew wider. If I didn't go to the interview, it would be too late. I didn't hesitate at all and ripped off the tail of my skirt, changing my long dress into a short one. What I wore didn't matter. What mattered was that the interviewers would see the real me. I strode forward. My mother tried to grab me, but many kind people stopped her. I made it to the test center. My mother was cursing behind me, using every terrible word she knew. I ignored her because I had more important things to do. Calmly, I confidently answered all of the interviewers' questions. When their faces broke into satisfied smiles, I knew that I had triumphed. After the interview, I was not home when a few neighbors were already pointing and whispering about me. "Look, that's Shen Qingqing. She was wearing such a short skirt to seduce the interviewers. So shameless. Young girls nowadays will do anything for money. They will take shortcuts." I heard that in the interview she did a striptease to get a good score. Listening to these ridiculous rumors, I was speechless. It was obvious that this was my mother's work. When Auntie Pang saw me, she quickly grabbed my hand. "Qingqing, you're finally back. Just now your parents were desperately talking badly about you. They said that you are a mistress, and that you're trying to seduce men. Qingqing, I've watched you grow up, so I know that you would never do such a thing." Auntie Pang had been very kind to me. When I was little, my parents would take my brother out with them and not care about my well-being. When I was starving, I could only beg for food from the neighbors. Auntie Pang would always make sure to save some for me. In my heart, she was a god. Now, to make me give in, my mother had made up a lot of false stories about me in public. My reputation was being trampled into the dirt. I smiled and reassured Auntie Pang. "Thank you, Auntie Pang, for believing in me. Those rumors are just what my mother made up, so I won't become a teacher." Auntie Pang sighed in relief. "I knew it. You're a good girl. You would never do such things. I'll explain it to the other neighbors. You just focus on becoming a good teacher. Also, if you ever need any help, make sure you let me know." After saying goodbye to Auntie Pang, I went home with a heavy heart. My clothes and books had been thrown on the floor. When my mother saw me, she didn't say a word and slapped me across the face. "You little brat. I think your wings have hardened and you dare to disobey me. From now on, you get out of this house. Let's see where you can go without this family." This was what I had wanted. Right after the interview, I had used the money I had earned from my part-time jobs to rent a small apartment. I quickly packed up all of my things. One suitcase was enough. As I was about to leave, I heard my mother and brother deliberately lowering their voices. "Mom, it's all because of that jinx. I lost another $100,000 today. Quickly give me the money." "What? Another $100,000? Tianxi, we don't have any money left." "If we don't have the money, go get it. Stop talking so much nonsense, or you won't see your precious son again. Tianxi, don't worry. That money loser can still earn us a lot of money when we sell her off later. I've thought about it. If she wants to become a teacher, let her do it. If she becomes a teacher, we can sell her for more. I listened to everything coldly, without much emotion. I had known long ago that they were extremely selfish people who would do anything to gain something for themselves. Leaving them was the best choice. From now on, I didn't want to have anything to do with that family. After I moved out, everything went smoothly. I successfully passed my credential interview. I was hired to teach at a prestigious high school and became a teacher who dedicated herself to education. Because of my excellent performance, I was chosen to be the new teacher representative and give a speech. There were many people in the audience, including all of the teachers, students, and school leaders, and some of the parents. In the middle of my speech, the audience suddenly became noisy. When I looked over, I saw that my mother and brother had made an inappropriate appearance. They walked in arrogant. I want to report Shan Qingqing for disregarding her family, living lavishly, and having a promiscuous private life. She's a piece of garbage. How can you have a person like this as a teacher? Your school is condoning their evil ways. When the others heard this, they started to whisper among themselves. Some parents even stood up, angrily shouting at me. How can you have just anyone become a teacher? What if she leads my Yaozu astray? Where is the principal? I demand that my Yaozu be transferred to another teacher. That's right. How can someone who doesn't want their own parents be a good teacher? Some parents thought that they shouldn't just listen to my mother and needed to be rational. The situation was very chaotic. To control the situation, the school's leadership had to step forward to calm my mother. However, this only encouraged her performance. She was crying. Please tell me the truth. We've borrowed so much money to support Shan Qingqing's studies. My son even had to drop out of school. And now that she's made it, she has cut us off. She has a home, but she won't come back. And Shan Qingqing is not only immoral but also unethical. She cheated on her credential interview. I saw with my own eyes that on the day of the interview, she secretly changed her long skirt for a short one. What else could it be but to seduce the interviewers? She's a disgrace to the teaching community. Can you really trust your children with such a teacher? Her words were like a bomb, and everyone sided with my mother. My God, she should be kicked out of school. We can't let such a person destroy our country's future. Shan Qingqing, get out of our school. Faced with increasingly angry parents, I was thinking about what to say. Gu Jingshu, a male teacher, stepped forward. During her time at the school, Shan Qingqing has been loved by her students. Her teaching skills have been recognized by everyone. You will be legally responsible for the slander that you are making. My mother smiled contemptuously. Shan Qingqing, I didn't think you would hook up with a man so fast. I was right. A slut like you can't live without a man. I knew her purpose was to ruin my reputation and force me to quit my job and accept her arrangements. Sure enough, my phone vibrated. It was a text from my mother. You little bitch. I'm going to ruin you. I'll show you the consequences of not listening to me. After sending the text, she put on a gentle smile. She looked at me with a smile. My dear daughter, you are also a part of this family. You shouldn't show your face in public. We need you. I looked at them coldly. Shen Tianxi dropped out of school because he was smoking, drinking, and fighting with classmates and got kicked out. And how does our family's debts have anything to do with me? Ever since middle school, I've earned all of my tuition and living expenses by doing part-time jobs. And as for why I dressed that way for the interview, aren't you the one who knows best? And you keep saying that you need me. Do you need me to go back and pay off gambling debts? With that, I pulled out a voice recorder from my pocket and held it up. After pressing play, my mother and brother's voices were clearly audible. Tianxi, don't worry. That worthless girl will earn us money when we sell her off later. I've thought about it. If she wants to be a teacher, let her do it. If she becomes a teacher, we can sell her for more. I knew what kind of people they were. So, after Auntie Peng warned me, I had turned on the recorder and captured the evidence. The scene became silent. After all, the truth was right there. My mother rushed towards me, trying to snatch the recorder. Shen Qingqing, you little bitch. You spied on our conversation, and even recorded us. My mother was only 5 feet tall, and I was 5 feet and 7 inches tall. She was trying to reach me by tiptoeing, which was a little comical. When my brother saw this, he raised his hand trying to hit me, but Gu Jingshu grabbed his hand. This is not a place for you to cause trouble. You two leave now. My mother did not look like she was going to back down. All of this is made up. Shen Qingqing made this all up to slander us. She has always been a liar since she was a child. When she was younger, she was greedy and often stole things from our house to sell. I smiled coldly. My mother was truly trying to destroy me. Just as my mother was about to continue slandering me, someone yelled out from the door. Zhang Shufan, you're lying. I saw that it was Auntie Pang. She was also with a large group of neighbors. As they came in, they started to speak. This Qingqing was raised on food given by everyone in the neighborhood. She was so pitiful. Her parents never cared about her. After they gave birth to her brother, the girl was even more pitiful. She wore thin clothes even in the winter. That family is addicted to drinking and gambling. It's not easy for Qingqing to grow up to be such a good person. I've watched her grow up. There's absolutely nothing wrong with her character. After everyone shared their stories, the people in attendance knew what kind of person I was and what my mother had done. My mother's words held no credibility. The principal rushed over with joy and shook my hand excitedly. Miss Shun, I didn't know you had gone through so much. You must have worked twice as hard to achieve your success today. I propose that you be promoted to the head of the teaching team. At the same time, we'll give you the Best Teacher Award for this term. Do you have any objections? I shook my head. How could I have any objections? This was more than I could have ever dreamed of. As soon as the principal finished speaking, the room broke into thunderous applause. Since I was a child, my life had been filled with endless criticism and insults. But at this moment, I felt a new strength. I had to be brave. I bowed politely to the principal. Don't worry, principal. I will dedicate myself to teaching and to the educational cause. I looked at Auntie Pang with gratitude. If it weren't for her, I would not have been able to deal with my mother so quickly. Auntie Pang smiled and patted my shoulder. Qingqing, do well. When I looked back, my mother and brother had disappeared. They knew that if they continued to cause trouble, it would not hurt me. So, they took advantage of the confusion and slipped away. It was for the best anyway. I didn't want to waste any more energy on them. After that incident, Gu Jingshu and I grew closer. I also slowly realized that he was everything I saw him to be. Honest, courageous, and passionate about life. Had been a long time since my life had been touched by sunshine. So, it was natural that Gu Jingshu and I got together. I had almost no contact with Zhang Shufan. A year later, Gu Jingshu and I were happily dating, and we decided to get engaged. I had met Gu Jingshu's mother. She was an elegant and generous woman, completely different from my mother. She didn't mind my family background and treated me like a daughter. Gu Jingshu knew about my relationship with my mother. After asking my opinion, he decided to respect my decision. So, my family wasn't invited to the engagement ceremony. At the engagement banquet, Gu Jingshu took my hand, placed a ring on my finger, and gazed into my eyes. Qingqing, I'm so lucky to have met you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to take care of you for the rest of my life. I was touched, and just as I was about to respond, a harsh voice cut through the air. Well, Shun Qingqing, you're as shameless as ever. How can you do this to Dagong, who's been waiting for you? My mother walked over with a smile, and then stood before Gu Jingshu's mother. I'm so sorry, my daughter has always been promiscuous, and she has had countless boyfriends. That Dagong, he was just a boyfriend that Qingqing was keeping at home. He has been waiting for her. What should we do now? In this life, seeing this horrible Chun Dagong, my hand balled up into a fist. In my past life, my mother had sold me to him to pay off my brother's gambling debts. After losing money, he treated me like merchandise, selling me to others. I had been humiliated in a way I had never known before. They were all the murderers who were indirectly responsible for my death. Seeing that I was not backing down, my mother feigned concern and grabbed Gu Jingshu's hands. Jingshu, right? As soon as I saw you, I knew you were a good boy. But unfortunately, our Qingqing isn't worthy of you. My daughter's private life is too messy. I heard she even has diseases. I'm doing this for your own good. All of the guests were paying attention. Faced with their slander, I yelled, "You're lying, I don't even know any Dagong." When Chun Dagong heard me, he grinned, showing off his two big yellow teeth. "Ching ching, baby, don't pretend. Not only do I know your body measurements, but I also know that you only wear plain solid color underwear. More importantly, I know that there's a mole on your arm and chest." The guests gasped. After all, being able to talk about something so private most likely meant that what he said was true. My mother rushed over and lifted my sleeve, exposing the mole on my left arm. "See? Dagong was right." As the crowd gasped, Chun Dagong stared at my chest with leering eyes. "Baby, should we verify the mole on your chest?" From my embarrassed expression, they had already guessed the answer. I knew that my mother must have told him. Chun Dagong smiled. "What do you say? I'm right? Shin Ching Ching, come home with me. You pervert." Chun Dagong was not angry. Instead, he looked pleased. "Baby, you didn't say that when we were in bed. Let's go home now so you can taste my power." My mother immediately agreed. "That's right, Ching Ching, it doesn't matter who you marry. Why make it easy for someone else? You can give Dagong two big, healthy boys these 2 years. Then you can live a happy life together. What's so good about being a teacher? You always show your face in public. You're not a good woman." The guests were stunned. They didn't believe that in the 21st century, there were still people who would say such things. The engagement ceremony was ruined. I looked at Gu Jingshu and his mother with shame. I knew that I had embarrassed them. If they wanted to call off the engagement, I couldn't blame them. When I felt hopeless, Gu Jingshu's mother spoke up. "Shin Ching Ching is my daughter-in-law, so I will trust her unconditionally. You all should leave now, or I'll call the police." My mother sneered. "Dear, don't be fooled by the little slut. She's a habitual liar. She's always lying to everyone. I must take her back and teach her a lesson." Gu Jingshu grabbed my hand tightly. "Don't be afraid, I'm here." My mother nudged Chun Dagong. "What are you waiting for? Take Ching Ching home." Chun Dagong rushed over excitedly. I whispered into his ear, using a voice that only the two of us could hear. "Chun Dagong, have you ever wondered why my parents want to sell me to you? It's all part of their plan. After you marry me, they want me to encourage you to gamble, and then they'll set you up, making you lose everything. After you lose all your money, they'll take me back and sell me to the next person." Chun Dagong didn't believe it at all. "Do you think I'm stupid?" I paused and lowered my voice again. "Didn't you owe a large sum of money to a gangster and then run away? My mother told me all about that. They even planned to use this to threaten you." In my past life, after Chun Dagong was drunk, he had let that information slip. This was how I knew all of that. When Chun Dagong heard this, his face immediately changed. He looked at my mother with hatred. Then, as if he had made up his mind, he threw a fist at my mother's head. "Go to hell, you dare to stab me in the back." With that, he attacked my mother, giving her a hard punch. My mother staggered and fell to the ground. When my brother saw my mother get hit, he rushed to help. Chun Dagong and my brother started to fight, and the scene was a complete mess. Gu Jingshu stood protectively in front of me, preventing me from getting hurt. Even though my mother was on the ground, she was still screaming, "Tianxi, beat that bastard to death. Avenge your mother." Chun Dagong became even more furious. He grabbed a vase and smashed it at my brother. My brother fell to the ground, covered in blood. Zheng Shufan was shocked, and after a while, she cried and rushed over to my brother. "Tianxi, you must not die. If something happens to you, how am I going to live? You're the one who should be on the ground, not Shen Qingqing, you little slut." Later, my brother was sent to the hospital. Although he survived, he became a vegetable. The doctors said that the probability of him waking up was 1%. Chun Dagong was sent to jail for intentionally causing harm. I heard from Zheng Shufan again a few months later. Gu Jingshu and I got married. I went to give Auntie Peng wedding candy. While she was congratulating me, she told me what had happened to my parents. After all of this had happened, my father was drinking every day. When he saw that his son had become a vegetable, he would become angry. He thought that my mother was responsible. After drinking, he would start to hit her. She was always black and blue. At first, the neighbors would try to stop him, but after being attacked by my mother, they stopped trying to help. My mother was often beaten to a pulp. Hearing all of this, I didn't have any emotion because this was all the result of her actions. A few months later, I saw Zheng Shufan calling me. She was crying on the phone. Qingqing, after your brother became a vegetable, your father is always beating me. I can't take it anymore, so I divorced him. My precious daughter, I only have you. You can't abandon me. Hearing that horrible precious daughter, I felt sick to my stomach. She would only think of me during these times. But it was too late. Without a second thought, I hung up the phone. This kind of fake family love was not what I wanted. A year later, Gu Jingshu and I had a child, a smart and lovely little princess. With her big eyes and white skin, I felt that all of the pain I had felt had been healed. I promised myself that I would give her the best life. One day, while I was in the hospital doing postpartum recovery, the nanny came rushing over. Qingqing, it's bad, the baby is gone. My head spun. My daughter should be with the nurses getting a bath. How could she be gone? My body was trembling because I was scared. I did my best to stay calm and asked to see the security footage. In the security video, I quickly identified a familiar figure. She had sneaked into the hospital and took my daughter when the nurses weren't watching. I would recognize that figure anywhere. Without hesitating, I called the police. According to the security footage and my mother's movements, the police were able to roughly guess the direction she went. But when I arrived at a small remote village, we had no leads. I refused to give up. I went door to door. Finally, in a small abandoned house, I heard the faint cries of a baby. I immediately kicked down the door. My daughter was in the room with Zheng Shufan. The baby was carelessly placed on a chair, not wearing any clothes. My poor baby was crying. Her face was red, and her voice was hoarse because she was so scared. When Zheng Shufan realized what had happened, she started to cry and apologize to me. Qingqing, I was wrong. Can you forgive me? I thought that daughters are worthless. You were supposed to give birth to a boy, so you could have a good place in your husband's family. I did this for you. You would only be willing to have another child after this money loser died. I laughed at her words. So you want to kidnap my daughter? Or do you want to use her to threaten me? When I directly said what she was thinking, she became vicious. My daughter started to cry when she saw me. My mother grabbed her neck. Stop crying, you money loser. My blood pressure rose and I rushed over to save my daughter, but Zheng Shufan suddenly pulled out a knife, and before I could do anything, she slashed my arm. Immediately, the blood started to pour out and my arm was limp. She snarled. Shen Qingqing, you are the one who made me into this. You are my daughter, so I would never hurt you. But you continued to oppose me. Blood was dripping from my arm, but I didn't care about myself. Mom, you always say that you're doing this for me, but in reality you're just doing this to satisfy your desire for control. Stop making excuses and give my daughter back. I've already called the police. They'll be here soon. When my mother heard this, she became even more insane. She roared like a wild beast. You little slut. You actually called the police. I should have strangled you the moment you were born. It's okay though. Now that this little animal is in my hands, I will strangle her and make you suffer just like this. You destroyed my son. Now I will destroy your daughter. Zheng Shufan started to strangle my daughter, who started to turn red. From the lack of oxygen, my baby's cries grew weaker and weaker. I tried with my remaining strength to save her, but I couldn't. At the most critical moment, the police burst into the room, controlling Zheng Shufan and saving my daughter. I held my daughter tight. I promised that she would not be hurt. After an examination, my daughter was found to be in good health other than a little fear. And Zheng Shufan was arrested for attempted murder. My vegetative brother had passed away, and when I went to his room it smelled terrible. Maggots and flies were crawling all over his body. I felt sick and quickly left that place. Later, Zheng Shufan called me from prison several times, expressing remorse. She wanted me to come visit her, but I refused. My family has only brought me pain and trauma. A person can't choose their own birth, but they can create their own future. After going through the mountains of hardships, every day is a new beginning. I continued to shine in my classroom, and I used my knowledge to help many children who were like me escape from their prisons. Miss Shun, good morning. Good morning, students. Today will be another beautiful day.